Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudire nashtaprayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttam shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. So continuing with our discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Answers by Citing the Lord's Version, text number 3 onwards. So Shukdev Goswami is further answering King Parikshit's questions. Yarhi vav mahimni sve parasmin kalamayayo ramet gat sammohas tyakto dasate tado bhayam. As soon as a living entity becomes situated in his constitutional glory and begins to enjoy the transcendence beyond time and material energy, he at once gives up the two misconceptions of life, I and mine, and thus becomes fully manifested as a pure self. So in the previous two verses, Shukdev Goswami explained how the living entity, which is superior to material energy, still comes under the clutches of Maya or material energy because of this conception of I and mine. Mainly because first he wanted to enjoy separately from Krishna, or he wanted to become the Supreme Lord, I, and then he gets stuck in this body conception of life. Well, as soon as he becomes situated in his constitutional glory, means constitutional glory of servant of Krishna, then he gives up these two misconceptions and becomes fully manifested as a pure self. The two misconceptions of life, it's a long purport, but it's a very important purport Prabhupada has given. The two misconceptions of life, namely I and mine, are verily manifested in two classes of men. In the lower state, the conception of mine is very prominent, and in the higher state, the misconception of I is prominent. Like in the animal state of life, the misconception of mine is perceivable, even in the category of cats and dogs, and who fight with another with the same misconception of mine. So cats and dogs and other animals, they fight with each other based on mine. This is mine. This is my area. This is my chair. This is my part or whatever. This is my food. In the lower stage of human life, the same misconception is also prominent in the shape of it's my body, it's my house, it's my family, it's my caste, it's my nation, it's my country, and so on. And in the higher stage of speculative knowledge, the same misconception of mine is transformed into I am, or it's all I am, etc. There are many classes of men comprehending the same misconception of I and mine in different colors. But the real significance of I can be realized only when one is situated in the consciousness of I am the eternal servitor of the Lord. This is pure consciousness, and the whole Vedic literatures teach us this conception of life. So I will always remain. In fact, mine will also remain, but it will be pure. I am the servitor, eternal servitor of Lord. And mine, then it becomes just like Prabhupada explains, no? Mine is at the lower level of life. And when you go higher, material life, and when you go higher, I is a higher level. But that is the bodily conception. In spiritual world, which is material world is perverted reflection of spiritual. So in spiritual world, I is at a lower level. Means I am eternal servitor of Krishna. And then the mine is at a higher level. And that mine is Krishna is mine. That is Srimati Radharani's conception or mood. She doesn't say, I am Krishna's. She says, Krishna is mine. That is Mamatva. Yashoda Maya also says, Krishna is my Lala. So that is little higher than Radharani's mine, She says, Krishna is mine. So it's just a complete opposite of material world. The misconception of I am the Lord or I am the Supreme is more dangerous than the misconception of mine. Although there are sometimes directions in the Vedic literatures to think oneself one with the Lord, but that does not mean that one becomes identical with the Lord in every respect. Undoubtedly, there is oneness of the living entity with the Lord in many respects, but ultimately the living entity is subordinate to the Lord, and he is constitutionally meant for satisfying the senses of the Lord. The Lord therefore asks the conditioned souls to surrender unto him. Had the living entities not been subordinate to the supreme will, why would the living entity be asked to surrender? Say Prabhupada is going into this Mayavad philosophy where they say, I am the Lord or I am the Supreme. But Krishna in Bhagavad Gita clearly asked everybody, Arjuna, and through Arjuna, all the living entities, conditional living entities, to surrender unto him. If they were both at the same level, why would Krishna ask them to surrender? Why would God ask another God to surrender unto him? It doesn't make sense. He only asks because this is our constitutional position to be a servant of Krishna. Had the living entity being equal in all respects, then why was he put under the influence of Maya? We have already discussed many times that material energy is controlled by the Lord. Bhagavad Gita 9:10 confirms this controlling power of the Lord over the material nature. Can a living entity who claims to be as good as a supreme being control the material nature? No. The foolish I would reply, he will do so in future. Even accepting that in the future one will be as good as controller of the material nature as a supreme being, then why is one now under the control of material nature? So this I am the Supreme Lord it's a false concept. It's completely wrong. In the Bhagavad Gita says that one can be freed from the control of the material nature by surrendering unto the Supreme Lord. But if there is no surrender, then the living entity will never be able to control the material nature. So surrender unto Supreme Lord, one can get away from the clutches of material nature. So one must give up this conception of I. I means not, losing one's identity, but misconception of I, which is I am the Supreme Lord. I am God. By practicing the way of devotion service, or firmly being situated in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. A poor man without any employment or occupation may undergo so many troubles in life, but if by chance the same man gets a good service under the government, he at once becomes happy. There is no profit in denying the supremacy of the Lord, who is the controller of all energies. But one should be constitutionally situated in one's own glory, namely, to be situated in the pure consciousness of being the eternal servitor of the Lord. In his conditional life, the living entity is servant of the illusory Maya, and in his liberated state, he is pure, unqualified servant of the Lord. So this is a constitutional position to be servant of the Lord. To become untinged by the modes of material nature is a qualification for entering into the service of the Lord. As long as one is a servant of mental concoctions, one cannot be completely free from the diseases of I and mine. So this is also Rupa Goswami says in Nectar of Devotion also, Sarvapadhi vinirmuktam tatparitvena nirmalam. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevnam Bhaktiruchyate. So Sarva Upadhi Vinirmuktam. Sarva Upadhi, get rid of all the titles. Means I am this, I am that. And all those titles are basically belonging to the body. There's nothing else. But we have to get rid of those titles when we are serving the Lord, when we want to serve the Lord properly. The supreme truth is uncontaminated by the illusory energy because he's the controller of that energy. In fact, we were talking yesterday about a person playing the role of somebody else, which he is not. so, so just like in a drama, if somebody wants to play the role of another person, if suppose when somebody wants to play the role of, I don't want to say Krishna or some other character, then he has to completely forget his other identity. Then he can play that role properly. Because he has to get it complete the feeling of, suppose suppose Ashok Variku Prabhu here sometimes plays a role of different roles on the stage. So he forgets that time. He forgets he is Ashok Variku or Akrodha Divya Prabhu. He completely absorbs himself in that role in the drama. Then only he can play it properly. So similarly, when we have to come to a real understanding of I'm servant of Krishna, we have to forget this bodily titles. Then only we can serve Krishna properly. So forgetting the bodily title doesn't mean we have to give up the bodily titles or give up the job or give up the business or something like that. No. It's just we have to understand I am the servant of Krishna. Then we can serve him properly. That's why Rupa Goswami says, Sarva Upadi Vinirmuktam. Get rid of all these titles. At least get rid of those thoughts that I am this, that's why I cannot serve Krishna. Just like in our kirtan also, sometimes people hesitate to dance in the kirtan. Oh, what will people say? What will others say? What will audience say? It is said, just give up all those thoughts. Just dance in the kirtan and enjoy the kirtan. Afterwards, you have the rest of the day to figure about your titles, bodily titles. That is devotion service. The supreme truth is uncontaminated by the illusory energy because he is the controller of that energy. The relative truths are apt to be engrossed in the illusory energy. The best purpose is served, however, when one is directly facing the supreme truth, as when one faces the sun. The sun overhead in the sky is full of light, but when the sun is not in the visible sky, all is in darkness. Similarly, when one is face to face with the Supreme Lord, he is freed from all illusions, and one who is not in the darkness of illusory Maya. The Bhagavad Gita confirms this as Mam Chavyo Avyavicharin Bhakti Yogina Sevte. So the science of Bhakti Yoga, of worshipping the Lord, glorifying the Lord, hearing the Shrimad Bhagavatam from the right sources, not from the professional men, but from a person who is Bhagavatam in life, and being always in the association of pure devotees should be adopted in earnestness. One should not be misled by misconceptions of I and mine. The karmis are fond of the misconception of mine. The jnanis are fond of misconception of I, and both of them are unqualified to be free from the bondage of illusory energy. Shrimad Bhagavatam and primarily the Bhagavad Gita are both meant for delivering a person from the misconception of I and mine. And Srila Vyasadeva transcribed them for the deliverance of the fallen souls. So this I and mine is basically the bodily conception of life. So we have to get above it. So the process is bhakti. When we engage ourselves in the service of Krishna, And at the same time, if we keep on reminding ourselves, I am not this body, I am a spirit soul, I am a divine, knowledgeable, full of bliss spirit soul. I am not this body which is full of miseries. And whatever I have, actually, whatever I have is given to me by mercy of Krishna for his service. So mine concept will also go away. Actually, everything belongs to Krishna. Everything, even the body that we have. We say this is my body, but actually this body is made of, we know, all the elements, the senses, objects of the senses, and this and that. This all belongs to Krishna. It's all energy of Krishna. So when we say mine, so even this body belongs to Krishna. What to speak of the byproducts of this body, or people attached to this body? Everything belongs to Krishna. So we have to come to that level of understanding. The living entity has to be situated in the transcendental position where there is no more influence of time nor of the material energy. In conditioned life, the living entity is subjected to the influence of time in dream of past, present, and future. The mental speculator tries to conquer the influence of time by future speculations of becoming Vasudeva or the Supreme Lord himself by means of culturing knowledge and conquering our ego. So mental speculator, so Gyanis, the so-called Gyanis, they try to become like Vasudeva Supreme Lord. But the process is not perfect. Perfect process is to accept Lord Vasudeva as a supreme in everything. And the best perfection in culturing knowledge is to surrender unto him because he is the source of everything. Only in that conception one can get rid of the misconception of I and mine. Both Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam confirm it. Srila Vyasadeva has specifically contributed to the illusion living entities, the science of God, and the process of Bhakti Yoga in this great literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the conditioned soul should fully take advantage of this great science. Text number 4. Atma Tattva Vishuddhyartham Yadaha Bhagavan Ritam Brahmane Darshayan Rupam Avyalika Vritatirtaha. O King, the personality of Godhead, being very much pleased with Lord Brahma because of his non-deceptive penance in Bhakti Yoga, presented his eternal and transcendental form before Brahma, and that is the objective goal for purifying the conditioned soul. Atma Tattva is a science of both God and the living entity. Atma Tattva means self-realization, science of self-realization. Both the Supreme Lord and the living entity are known as Atma. Supreme Lord is called Paramatma and the living entity is called Atma, the Brahma or the Jiva. Both the Paramatma and the Jivatma, being transcendental to the material energy, are called Atma. So Shukdev Goswami explains this verse with the aim of purifying the truth of both the Paramatma and the Jiva. Generally, people have many wrong conceptions about both of them. The wrong conception of the Jivatma is to identify the material body with the pure soul. And the wrong conception of Paramatma is to think him on an equal level with the living entity. Paramatma is not Jivatma. No, Jivatma is not Paramatma. They both are separate, both are different. But both misconceptions can be removed by one stroke of Bhakti Yoga, just as in the sunlight, both the sun and the world and everything within the sunlight are properly seen. In the darkness, one cannot see the sun, nor himself, nor the world. But in the sunlight, one can see the sun, himself, and the world around him. Srila Shukdev Goswami therefore says that for purification of both wrong conceptions, the Lord presented his eternal form before Brahmaji, being fully satisfied by Brahma's non-deceptive vow of discharging Bhakti Yoga. Except for Bhakti Yoga, any method of realization of Atma Tattva or the science of Atma will prove deceptive in the long run. So now Shukdev Goswami is going to explain how Lord appeared before Brahmaji when Brahmaji performed the tapasya in the beginning of creation. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that only by Bhakti Yoga can one know Him perfectly, and then one can enter into the science of God. Brahmaji undertook great penances in performing Bhakti Yoga, and thus he was able to see the transcendental form of the Lord. So somebody will ask, Brahmaji was performing tapasya. How come that was Bhakti Yoga? That was Bhakti Yoga because that pleased Krishna. Because Krishna asked him to do tapasya and he sat down to do tapasya. And since it was beginning of the creations, at that time it was Satyuga. Satyuga, the process was to do tapasya. His transcendental form is 100% spiritual, and one can see him only by spiritualized vision after proper discharge of tapasya or penance in pure bhakti yoga. The form of the Lord manifested before Brahma is not one of the forms with which we have experience in the material world. Brahmaji did not perform such severe types of penance just to see a form of material production. Therefore, the question by Maharaj Parikshit about the form of the Lord is answered. The form of the Lord is Satchidanand, or eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. But the material form of the living being is neither eternal, nor full of knowledge, nor blissful. That is the distinction between the form of the Lord and that of the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul, however, can regain his form of eternal knowledge and bliss simply by seeing the Lord by means of Bhakti Yoga. So the form that appeared before Brahmaji was the form of Krishna himself as Satchitananda Vigraha. The summary is that due to ignorance, the conditioned soul is encaged in the temporary varieties of material forms. But the Supreme Lord has no such temporary form like the conditioned souls. He is always possessed of an eternal form of knowledge and bliss, and that's the difference between the Lord and the living entity. One can understand this difference by the process of Bhakti Yoga. Brahma was then told by the Lord the gist of Srimad Bhagavatam in 4 original verses. So those 4 verses, which is called Chatushloki Bhagavatam, which is the gist of Bhagavatam, which is a summary of the whole Bhagavatam, means the whole Bhagavatam is encapsulated in those 4 verses. And they will be presented in this chapter only. So Krishna or Lord Vishnu appeared and he told Brahmaji only those 4 verses. And Brahmaji, like Brahmaji told Narad Muni also, we read that, and told that you should expand on this, what I'm trying to tell you. And similarly, Brahmaji first expanded on those 4 verses of the Bhagavatam. The sound of Srimad Bhagavatam, okay, before. The Srimad Bhagavatam is not a creation of the mental speculators. The sound of Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental, and the resonance of Srimad Bhagavatam is as good as that of the Vedas. Thus, the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam is a science of both the Lord and the living entity. Regular reading or hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam is also the performance of Bhakti Yoga, and one can attain the highest perfection simply by the association of Srimad Bhagavatam. Both Shukdev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit attained perfection through the medium of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken by the Lord to Brahmaji when he appeared to give darshan to Brahmaji. So anyway, we'll stop here. See anybody have any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Wonderful explanation of I and mind, Prabhuji. And even in the spiritual world, and the way you explained the I and mind is mind-boggling. that how the perverted form is in the material nature and how it is in the actual form in the spiritual world. And the explanation of mind and I has really touched us today. It's
Thank
so
you.
wonderful, so wonderful, so wonderful.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I and mine will remain, but it will be pure. That's all.
Prabhuji, one question
Yes,
on Lord Shiva. So we say it says that Lord Shiva is Ajanma, but in Krishna's Swarup, Vishwa Swarup, which he showed to Arjuna, Shiva also appeared in one of the faces of Shiva also appears in it. So how do we correlate it? Though we know that it's all one form, it's all one, but people say that it's Ajanma. Lord Shiva's form is Ajanma. There's no birth of Lord Shiva.
yeah, because Lord Shiva, as Sadashiva, he has his own planet, Kailash. That Kailash is not in the material world, Kailash. That Kailash is beyond the material world. And when Sadashiva appears in the material world, he appears from within the eyebrows of Brahmaji when Brahmaji gets angry at four Kumaras. So the Rudras appear, and that is Shiva. So Shiva appears and as an expansion. That he's an expansion of Sadashiv in the material world, and he has a particular duty to perform. And he has his abode in the material world also, which is Kailash, and that this Kailash is expansion of the original Kailash. Just like Golok Vrindavan has an expansion here, it is Gokul Vrindavan. So same thing about Shivji. So Shivji is not doesn't take birth; he appears as expansion of Sadashiva.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I guess we can stop here. You all have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Jai Shri Ram.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Jai Shri